Good morning, everyone. Karibuni sana. We are a little late. So I want us to begin this forum. So kindly let us settle. My name is Simon. I work for Media Focus on Africa. And before I make the official introductions, I would like to request us to stand up. We always start our forums by singing the national anthem to remind us, especially at these times, that we are still Kenyans. So let us stand up and do the national anthem, then we can begin this forum. And my colleague Harrison loves to do the soloist work and leads. So Harrison, please lead us in the national anthem.
3 stanzas, okay? E Mungu nguvu yetu, ilete baraka kwetu, haki iwe ngao na mlinzi, na tukae na undugu, amani na uhuru, raha tupate na ustawi. Thank you. We'll complete it at the end.
All right. Thank you, Harrison. Thank you. Now, like I said, my name is Simon. I work for Media Focus on Africa. We are here for the 4th time. Rather, we are holding the editors roundtable for the 4th time. The last 3 roundtables we had, breakfast meetings rather, were held at the Intercon. And I'm told some people here first went to the Intercon before finding their way here. So, sorry about that. We couldn't find space at the Intercon. So that's why we had to come here this time. That said, are we good? Sound? You're good, eh? Right. So that said, the reason we are here as Media Focus on Africa, just want to make a very brief intro, and then I can welcome Freni to begin this forum and to bring on board the moderator so that we can start the discussions for today. The reason we are here, this country, just like many others, has its share of problems, and it's our responsibility to do what we can, look for solutions and work together to bring change. And as Media Focus on Africa, we believe that media is, can be one of the most powerful tools that can bring change in society. And that's why in most of our activities, 90% of what we do is media related. The reason we are here today is because we have a problem in this country of not electing and voting in women. And for the last 3 years, we have been working on a program trying to get women elected, and more specifically at the county level. So we are looking at the MCAs, and we are working in 8 counties in Kenya that did not elect or elected very few women. And so they were forced to nominate. And these counties are Nyandarua, Narok, Kajiado. Go to the other side, there is West Pokot, Trans Nzoia, then there is Kisumu, and then there is Mombasa. Is there another one I've left, Frey? And then so those are 8 counties. So those are the counties where you're working in. In some of those places, and Nandi. In some of those counties, really good things have happened. One of the counties that we are very proud of is Nandi County. Nandi County, about 6 elected MCAs. And the way we do our work is we profile these women, we train them how to use media, how to campaign, how to put themselves out there, to be heard, to be seen. And we work with them, we walk with them, we buy them space on radio, we connect them with journalists, help them know how to pitch stories. And it has been really interesting. In Nandi, for example, we went to Nandi in 2016 looking for women who wanted to vie for both the governor's position and the MCAs. Very few wanted to vie for the governor's position. And we found a number of women who we invited for our training. So one woman came for a training called Dr. Yulita Mitei. And in that forum, she was very little known, just doing her teaching at the university. And we were able to connect her with a number of journalists, called journalists to the forum. And in 1 week after the forum, she was profiled in the Standard. And from that time, after the story that was there on the Standard, she came to the limelight. And we were able to put her on the radio. And continuing, she was now known by the people. And she vied, and she now began looking for the position of governor, running in the Jubilee Party. And even if she was defeated, the current governor, Mr. Sang, who won the Jubilee ticket, took her on board as the deputy governor. And now she's the deputy governor. And even the women who did not win, in a county like Mombasa, we have a woman called Grace Olo. Grace Olo is a woman we put on radio, is a woman we put out there, and she was able to speak, and she was heard. And even though she lost, she still has ambitions, she still has aspirations to run next time. And the fact that we put her out there, and she was very eloquent, speaking about women issues, even after the program has ended in Mombasa, even though she lost, she has now become, in quotes, a media expert in Mombasa. Every radio station is calling her when they want to discuss gender issues. And so she's staying relevant. And so that's what we do. We want to keep women relevant. We want to keep them out there being heard. And why is it very, very important for us to do this? There are so many problems. There are so many reasons we may give why we need to have women elected and why we need to have women relevant. But for us at Media Focus on Africa, it goes to the most basic level. It comes down to the issues of UNGA. For the last 5 years, for failure to elect women, and therefore having to nominate so many at the county assemblies, this country has had to spend over 2 billion Kenya shillings. 2 billion Kenya shillings. When we went to the counties, we are working in counties like Kajiado, you do the mathematics there, that you realize that they are spending almost 250 million Kenya shillings to pay nominated MCAs. And that is minus all the other allowances, their travelings, all the other money spent on MCAs, Can we imagine how much can 250 million shillings do in Kajiado County? How much can 10 million shillings do in Kajiado County? Or West Pokot, where we are also working. If you divide that money per ward, and West Pokot, for example, has 20 wards. So it comes back down to the issues of UNGA. So if you're using all that money could have gone to development. It could have made a road somewhere. It could have improved the market somewhere. So beyond all the reasons we can give, the constitution and all that, it comes down to UNGA. Because at the end of the day, we will be taxed to take care of those needs. So if we don't elect, then we have to nominate. And then we have to bear the cost. And in 2013, in the county assemblies, only 82 women were elected. The improvement from 2017, now they are 96. So only a difference of an addition of how many? 14. So there is an improvement, but we still have a very long way to go. So how do we come in as media? We want to keep talking about these issues. We want to keep profiling these women. We want to keep looking at why are they not getting elected. Even if there was an improvement, what can we do better? And we can only do that by looking back. How did we profile them before? How did we cover women? What were the challenges? What were the improvements? As we like to say in these forums, and in many of our forums, and because we hold many of these kinds of discussions. Even in 2013, after the elections, we had another editors forum to discuss how the election was covered. Although this time, particularly, we are focusing on women. Wrong things happen because we don't ask questions. So that's why we organize these forums, in a critical way, in an open-minded way, without throwing blames on who and who. How can we work together as media as stakeholders, whether in the NGO, in the media, or other stakeholders who are interested in this issue. So that's why we are here. That's why we have invited you here. There will be much more to discuss. And so karibuni sana. You're free to air your views. The last 3 forums were very successful online. guys came on board. The forum was trending, and we decided to take the conversations today beyond this conference. We were using a hashtag last time, and so today we'll be doing a Facebook Live, and we'll also be streaming live on YouTube. So I hope that will not mean that you'll be very restricted what you can say. But we'll be streaming live. I'm going to share the links. You can follow us. If you have your phone here and you want to retweet what's going on, you can follow us at Media Focus, media_focus, media_focus. That's where we'll be tweeting. I'll also post the link of the YouTube Live there and the link of the Facebook Live there. So you can spread the word so that more people can get on board and they can also be part of this conversation. So karibuni sana. With those many words, because of time, I would like to invite Freni to take us now on from here, do the quick introductions to everybody who is here, and then you can begin the discussions. Karibuni sana.
Thank you, Simon, for that elaborate introduction that has given you a background of the kind of work we've been doing. My name is Freni Joey. I am a journalist, and now I work at Media Focus in Africa. Now, in doing this work, we haven't been alone. We have to rely on people like you, partners, journalists, in our special women radio programming, which I have been running since last year. We worked with community radio stations because the women we were working with were at the counties, and therefore the community vernacular radio stations had their kind of audience. So apart from those radio stations that are our partners, we have other partners like FIDA Kenya, that's represented here today. We have also been working with Kenya Women Holding, represented here today. We've been working with IFES, represented, and we are going to hear a few remarks from the representatives of the organizations that partner with us. So without saying so much, I'd like to invite Dr. Jennifer Riria, who is the CEO of Kenya Women Holding, to give us some few remarks. You're welcome. Let's give her a clap, please. I have to say, when I saw her walking in, she was walking in so much confidence. And the first thing I thought, wow, what a confident woman. And then I realized, oh, it's Dr. Jennifer.
Thank you, little one. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Greet the person next to you and say she really loves you. I mean, at times like this, we need to smile at each other. That's the only thing that works. I come from Kenya Women Holding. I'm the group CEO. And Kenya Women Holding works to empower, position, and advocate for women. That is what we stand for. And in doing that, under the advocacy pillar, we have an initiative called Tuvuke Initiative. Tuvuke Initiative is not new. It worked with you again prior to 2013 elections, and where we did fantastic job with the media. The Tuvuke Initiative, this time, prior to 2017 general elections, worked to implement the CARE project, which was funded by USAID and supported by IFES. And we worked very closely with NDI and the media. Now, without getting into so many details, what Tuvuke was able to do was tremendous, with this support I've mentioned, in collaboration with the media and supported by these key pillars I've mentioned. Tuvuke was able to train 733 women on short media appearances. Now, you may ask why this is important. It's very important for somebody to know how to present themselves to the media. Because if you don't, if you're not willing, I've just been discussing with Vaughn there, that she gets so frustrated because women don't want to go to the media. So we trained 733 women in media appearances, what to present, what they should say to the media in terms of themselves, in terms of their vision for the country. we profiled, and profiling must be taken positively. It is not profiling for negative. It's profiling for us meant working with women to enable them to articulate their vision, their aims, what they want to do as leaders to be able to endear themselves to the community. And we were able to profile 847. And I think that was tremendous because 67 of them were youth. And you saw how many youth have gone into elections this time. We also trained 99 reporters. I attended personally some of these meetings in gender reporting. Gender reporting is so critical because it will either portray, in most times, and I want to say this with all due respect to the media, whom I really love because they have always supported me for the last 27 years. I think it is very important for the media to realize, and gender reporting is very important because what has happened to a lot of women is that their portrayal has sometimes tagged them. They had negative tagging. So, and you can see as a result, we have 3 governors, we have three senators whom we profiled. We have 22 MPs, we profiled them. It means working with media is so critical to achieving what we want to achieve as the democratic people chase us. So we need to do that. What did we learn? And I think this is one of the things that you're going to be talking about, how much have we achieved to this day. What we learned through the process of profiling and working with the media and training, these many trainings that were done all over the country, several things came out, but the most important was this. Women complained that they are sidelined from the political parties. And you see, if they don't create a critical mass at the grassroots, they will never make it. So we need to think about what is it we are going to do to address that. The other thing that came up very seriously was the media. They said the media ignores them. We said, now the media won't ignore you anymore because we are here, but you have to present yourself. But we need to think about it. And the third one is they said, and they've always said this to me, not now, way from 2007. They do not have enough resources for them to be able to act as equals with the men. They don't have a fair playing background. And then we decided we are not going to stop because they have gone to the elections. Let's think through as Tuvuke and Kenya women with our partners. What is it are we going to do to make sure that momentum goes on? Because we are happy we are a little happy. We are warmed by what has happened in terms of the results. But we are very disturbed that we still have not done that 1/3 rule. We have not done the 1/3 representation. And it's not going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, unless we address these issues. So we decided that at Tuvuke, that we will continue. We make sure that the momentum does not stop now. We continue the momentum. I know we are still in the mode of elections, but we have decided for women, it is going to begin going on. And one of the things you have picked up as the initiative is that we need to address the financial issue. Because when women come to me, they only see the bank because of the Kenya Women Microfinance Bank, which I'm doing by KWFT. So we agreed that we're going right now to address the financial problem, the financial issue for women. That is to enable women in the processes, not to give them money for, I want to make this very clear, not to give them money for campaigning. Nobody gives money for campaigning, but money to empower and position them in the democratic processes. We have therefore initiated a democratic fund. We are calling it's a participatory, it's going to be a participatory fund. And it's called Democracy Fund, Democratic Fund. This Democracy Fund is going to do several things. It is going to provide women with capacity, and I want to unpack the word capacity. It is going to enable women to, let me go back a little bit. The fund is going to have two dimensions. There's a programmatic dimension, and there's going to be a money dimension. On the money dimension, anyone who is interested in contesting 2022 and other incumbents will join the program now, not 2022, now. They will become members of the trust. It's going to be administered under trust. They will begin participating in this trust, and we will create an endowment fund. On the programmatic side, we will work with would-be aspirants also to be able to, there are programs on the ground working with communities, working with the expected electorate. This way, they will endear themselves to the communities. We'll then work mechanisms of how they will be facilitated to be able to carry out the activities. At the same time, they will be saving in this fund. They will be participants, and it will be managed under a trust. Now, the trust will have trustees, of course. And the trustees, the governance structure will be very clear, what it will be doing. Now, this membership, this participatory aspect is so critical because we want to know as early as 2018, who are we dealing with? How many women are we dealing with? Are we getting there? We don't want to wait until 2022 and then we say, oh, we didn't get what we wanted to get. Now, I'm saying this, I'm introducing this very early because for us, we'll need the media alone. This is going to require a lot of training because we'll have to have a lot of convenience for everybody to come on board, including giving the details to the media when time comes, when we are launching. We'll have a big launch, and all of you will be invited and will be involved. Now, this requires, I said this is important for two things, and I'm going to stop after that. One, and I'm making a very big statement today, I do not think, as Jennifer Iria, that if we leave the fate of women to just legal processes, we'll get there. We need on one side the legal processes to go on, but we also need a practical side of it. And the practical side is we sit here and ask, how are we going to address those issues that are not legal? In fact, the legal provisions we have right now are enough. What we lack is other practical ideas of getting on. And this is what Kenya Women and Tuvuka is trying to do, is to say we want a practical thing. We are going to deal with the finance. And we make sure that that problem is taken off. Now, the second thing I'm going to say is this. We will need serious educational program. And you can call it civic education. I hate to use the word civic education because it's an educational program around the country. Because women must rise up themselves. women must rise up and strike. When I hear women are called out, and my teams would come back from the field and say, we have to dig them out, and NDI is there trying to dig them out to come to be profiled. Women must be encouraged, must be shown the value of them getting out and getting on this wagon. That's the only way we can support them. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you. I think we are on the right path, but let's get practical in terms of supporting women. The two sides, the legal and the practical side, must go together. We are not talking about campaigns. We are talking about democratic processes that will get women there. Let's be clear about those two concepts. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for convening this meeting. I need to move on to democratic processes. Thank you, and God bless you, and please vote on 26th. Do not stay at home.
Thank you very much, Dr. Riria, for those remarks. As she said, we cannot leave this to the process, and women must rise up themselves. I believe these are really good takeaways. And this sort of is in line with what Frederick Douglass said, his famous quote, that power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, and it never will. So we have to demand that women get their right space, and the media is going to help us a big deal in doing this. As I mentioned earlier, that we are working with several partners. Unfortunately, I didn't mention one. We work with National Endowment for Democracy, that's NED, also represented here today by Sarah Keithville. It's very nice to have you, Sarah, because she's based in Washington, but she was here for a few weeks to see how the work that they're supporting us in is going on. Also, I'd like to invite our next partner from the International Foundation for Electoral System. Most of us know it as IFES. That's Christina Wilfor, who is the chief of party, and she will make some few remarks.
Good morning. Wonderful to be here, and I am always amazed at the really creative ideas and energy that is present here on this issue and your commitment to move forward. So it's always just a wonderful breath of fresh air to see what you're doing here in Kenya around these issues. We want to highlight one aspect of violence against women in elections, and let me give you some context and from the perspective too of, is this getting proper media attention? This is one facet that we need to put a little bit more energy into in bringing some attention. So let me walk you through some concepts of this and IFES's work with several partners around this issue. We have to look at the issue of violence against women in elections in the larger context of what's happening for women candidates. And as we saw, there were only 11% of women who ran in the election. 170 women were elected. But we need to be in a situation here in the future when more women run. Because we know when more women run, more women win. This is what we see all around the world. And so we should look at this issue of barriers, whether it's media access or violence against women, of one of several things that need to happen to create an enabling environment for more women to put their foot forward. At the same time, there were some firsts that are important to acknowledge. There's some silver linings in what we saw with the results, with 3 women who won gubernatorial seats, another 3 who won in the Senate, and 7 additional women will be deputized in 7 counties. So it's falling short in the overall numbers, but we should celebrate and really understand what it took also to get these women in these positions. When we work on increasing women's political participation around the globe, as IFES with many partners in this space, we have to break down what are the barriers systemically that prevent women from going forward and competing equally with men. So whether it's rigid gender roles and the cultural aspects that we're trying to change, or it's political parties who are the gatekeepers of democracy, especially when it's around women's participation, whether it's the competitive environment, which at Kenya is at the top of the list in terms of that, or the other kind of mechanisms. Now you have 2/3 rule here, but it's not being followed. There's not a formula. There's not a pressure to keep this standard and make it meaningful within the political system. And I'm really impressed with Tuvuke Media Women Holding to focus on the media aspect, because we know from around the world that when you have sexist media coverage or when women's voices aren't equally heard, that this has a direct impact on women's political participation. It discourages people from voting. It discourages them from contributing to women's campaigns. And it dissuades women from entering politics. So the focus on the media is an important space to be, and I'm really glad that you're there. Let me say a bit about VAWI, violence against women in election. This is the definition that we use globally. It's any harm or threat that's committed against women with the intent or the impact of interfering with their free and equal participation in the electoral process during the electoral period. It includes harassment, intimidation, physical harm, threats, financial pressure. It may be committed in the home or other private spaces, and these acts may be directed at women in their role as electoral stakeholders. So we're not just talking about women's candidates, we're talking about women voters, poll workers, anyone who is in the spectrum of politics, and not just on election day, but through the election cycle. And so we're working worldwide to set a standard of defining what we see as VAWI so we can better measure it and understand where and how it's happening. When we began this work in many parts of the country, in Bangladesh, in Nepal, in Haiti, we were confirming some of our hypotheses. One, there is a lack of knowledge and data specifically around VAWI. And so that's what we've done this election cycle with several partners, and we should continue to do. How do we define what instances of VAWI are happening and what the nature of this problem is in Kenya? We also realize that there's a gender bias in data collection. So when we look at electoral violence, you usually have two verification of sources verifying that violence. But if the violence against a woman candidate is happening in the home, if her financial resources are threatened, her safety is threatened by the family, which we heard many women talk about before the election, many women candidates came forward in forums like this to speak to this, then we're not quite capturing what the unique circumstances and how to measure this. So we have to be sensitive to that. Thank you. We also know that women experience different types of violence in the electoral context than men. Men are not threatened with rape. So there's a gender aspect to this that we have to speak to and realize it's not just about a violent environment for everyone running. There are unique aspects that have to do with women as women. And that there's often this relationship, the perpetrator. And also that there's a lack of programming to both identify and deal with this. So that's the context of this issue. The framework that IFES has put together is to really go deeper into the typology. What are the types of VAWI that we're experiencing here in Kenya and other places? How are we assessing it? How are we continuing to monitor it? And importantly, what are the recommendations? And just having this conversation is part of the recommendation. We need to have a dialogue that more directly addresses this issue. So here's some of the gaps that come forward. So we would all agree that this is electoral violence. A poll worker is intimidated by a party supporter to stuff the ballot box. Okay, so that's electoral violence. But How about a female poll worker gets home from a training and her husband threatens her with divorce unless she stuffs the ballot? Or if she continues to be active outside of the home. This is a form of VAWI. So we have to figure out, how would this be reported? Who would care to document it? How would it be addressed? So we get really deeply under these issues. I want to speak about one instance after the election, tragedy, that you may have heard about, paid attention to. An IEBC female poll worker coming back from an IEBC meeting, mother of 4, murdered, raped, and this is VAWI. She was active as an IEBC poll worker. She was in the electoral space. Now, could be other motivations. We don't know the circumstances, but this is what we have to look at. How is it that women are coming from a home during the night? They're threatened uniquely because they're women. There's a vulnerability there. So this is a form of VAWI. The categories in the common sort of electoral violence tracking would look at political actors and state actors, voters, and media. But when we look at VAWI, we're expanding this to the public stakeholder, the private and social role. What's the relationship to the survivor? Were they home? Were they alone? What are the circumstances? And to also broaden it to track intimidation and verbal harassment. You may have seen an ad that IFES ran during the election cycle called Ugly Words. It's on the Better Than This Facebook page. It got huge traction. What we did is we took the real things said against women candidates, the verbal abuse of women candidates, and put them on display. Because we have to name these things before we change them. We can't just say, oh, this is the way it works here. Politics is dirty business. You have to toughen up. You're going to be called names, and you have to get used to it. It's a unique condition to female candidates, and it's wrong. And we can do better than this in Kenya. So we have to track it and respond to it. What happened in 2017, the first round of the election? You have several organizations verifying cases of VAWI. The Healthcare Assistance Kenya, the FIDA, and ELOG in their observation. So we gathered together last week, and we were looking at some of the points of data and what our shared understanding is. What we saw is that violence and insecurity absolutely depressed women's participation, and that there was implicit violence being reported. Loss of support from the family, public humiliation, verbal abuse. What we also saw, and this is really concerning, and what we can do perhaps here in this room, is that reporting is down. There's not an enabling environment right now which women feel safe to even come forward and report. There's a fear of retribution in the reporting. We also know that a viable and robust response mechanism is weak here in the referral system, partly because of the nursing strikes, because of the healthcare situation. So that needs to be strengthened, especially in this next round. So you had many stories and tragedies, truly tragic. A pregnant voter, age 33, gang raped in the early morning on her way to the polling station. Women voters threatened with eviction based on ethnic lines. And another 28-year-old woman shot by unknown people outside her house during protests. So these are the stories that, unfortunately, we need to talk about and bring to life and respond to. So we respond. Let me just put some thoughts into your mind. One is we have to raise the bar. So more coverage of women in politics is needed overall, more nuanced coverage of women, and more attention to the critical issues. Also, do we have a persuasive message? Not just a litany of things that are going wrong, but how do we figure out how to talk about this in a way that challenges people's thinking? Why should people care? How do we humanize the issue? We have to create an enabling environment for reporting, and that's, again, where the Better Than This appealing to an aspirational aspect of Kenya is meant to be, and to also promote the 1195 hack line so that people are utilizing this and so that they have real response and we have real data. Our goal with our communications campaign was to bring men into the conversation. And we didn't want to just send a "you go girl" empowering message aimed at women, which is sort of preaching to the choir, but instead find an entry point that was appealing to Kenyan values and put it in a positive light and make it inspirational. The result of the ad campaigns that we did is that several went viral. One in particular reached 17 million people. It was mostly between ages 18 and 35, and mostly men in our digital tracking who were engaged. In fact, on the Facebook page, it was 61% engagement with men, who also are seeing this issue in a different light. And they're part of the path forward in how we build a demand structure for change. So our other recommendations would be, in the short term, we'll come together, the groups I mentioned, to consolidate our findings and look at the real data of what we're looking at here, so we have a characterization of what the condition of VAWI is. And that will be important short and long term to get to various stakeholders. When I heard the Attorney General in the pre-election environment say he only knew of 2 cases of violence against women candidates, then we have some education to do. We have some informing to do of people who are in a position to do something about this. So we need to put that pressure on. We also need to put it onto the election observers. We did a gender audit through the International Election Observer Statements, and only one organization properly even mentioned gender, more or less, violence against women in election, and that was National Democratic Institute, who has a commitment to this issue. So we should all reach out to the international observation missions who are returning and say, this is one aspect that you should put some more attention to as you look at the electoral process. We also need to improve the electoral pathway, of course, for women, and the safety conditions in which women may feel less empowered, less protected to go to the polls on October 26th. IEBC also has a role. They should be speaking out. I mean, they have a lot of things to do on their list right now, but bringing some space to this issue, speaking about it specifically to women, is also something we expect, and we should pressure them to do that. In the long term, we really need education and training for electoral and non-electoral stakeholders. We need to define this issue. We need to talk about it. We also need to add gender to the hate speech provision, because if you look at the language of the hate speech definition, gender is not anywhere in there. So we need that mechanism in the long term, and we really need an advocacy strategy where we can figure out post-election how we take this issue, bring it forward, and really address it with serious solutions. So, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Christina, for those very interesting insights that can help us when we go back to our places of work, and also at an individual level. I mean, like you said in your last, as you're closing, that we need an advocacy strategy, and that's why we can't stop singing about how important the media is going to be to us. Now, talking about media and communications, our other very important partner is Twaweza Communications. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Professor Kimani Njogu of Twaweza Communications, and they will have a presentation for us. And also, we will have our panel, Yvonne Okwara, whom we did some really interesting work with at KTN when we were preparing for the 2017 election. So we sat down and thought, how do we prepare for these elections? What stories can we plan? And I believe that has really helped KTN News to move ahead. And so without saying too much, Yvonne will be here later on to the panel. I will hand over to Prof.
Thanks, Franny, and thanks, Christine. Really important presentation. We need to stay very focused on those hindrances to women's participation as voters as well as leaders. And I think that, as Christine emphasized, media has a very critical role to play in this process. And I think that it's not just the media, it's all of us. Because again, as Simon Gishia said this morning, when we don't elect women leaders, the cost is very, very high. We end up compromising on other developmental work. So we will do the short presentation on the Endline survey of the gender coverage, and I'll take a couple of minutes and then I'll hand over to Dr. George Gadhigi of the School of Journalism at the University of Nairobi, with whom we've been working. So again, to go back to Dr. Riria, we do have the framework, the constitutional framework. I recall those days when we were pushing for affirmative action and the type of constitution that we required, and we did a lot of work, many of us, to ensure that we have sufficient provisions in the constitution to ensure that we have some sense of equity. So we do have this opportunity. But despite the opportunity, there's still quite of work to be done. And I think the part of the problem is to assume that our advocacy work stops at the level of passage of policy and laws. I think that we should read advocacy work beyond the legislation and beyond the constitution to the implementation of those of that work. So those of us who are doing work in terms of social change should actually redefine advocacy so that it's the whole space. And therefore, we do have that facilitative environment. I'm providing a general context. We did a baseline earlier on, and actually, we were very surprised at the low coverage of women in media. Initially, I thought that we had transitioned, but apparently we had not transitioned. Women leaders are covered differently from men. The expectations in the media houses are higher. The environment is very hostile generally. And of course, the social setup and the cultural setup in which we live makes it very difficult for women to appear in media. So that's what we saw. We also saw that women leaders are very cautious about being visible in the media because of what happens to them after their appearance. There's a sense of hostility from families as well as from people who know them. And therefore, this self-consciousness makes it very difficult for them to avail themselves. And that there are very few women who are present in the various platforms that are availed. Even when we try to, whether those platforms are social media platforms or mainstream media, again, very, very few women leaders are present. But generally, again, we saw that women were willing to be visible. They wanted to be visible because they knew that visibility created opportunities for them, But there are major obstacles towards their presence. We also saw that there is lots of patriarchal attitudes and in the media houses themselves, and that if you look at the senior journalists in the media houses, most of them are male, and it's very difficult for women journalists to rise in the media houses. So that patriarchy itself that we see in the larger society is mirrored into the media houses, and therefore that creates a major problem also for women. And to say that yes, there is a sense of willingness. Some media houses have gender policies and so on, but we kept saying that maybe there is more work to be done in the media houses. There are opportunities. There is a general willingness. I think that we need to tip that willingness into action. That's what we saw. And we did recommend a couple of things, again, in the baseline. Some of those recommendations directed at media houses, and then others directed at women. We urged the media houses to provide equal coverage, to be balanced, and to be fair in the content in which they share with their leaders, with their readers rather, and to seek women in diverse domains so that leadership is not read just as political leadership, it's read also as economic leadership, religious leadership, social leadership, cultural leadership, and so on, and that political leadership by its very nature becomes part of the broader, definition of leadership. Because once you profile, once you present women who are succeeding within the economic space, then it becomes possible for them to move from the economic space to the political space. And therefore, really encouraging media houses to look at the larger definition of leadership. And the deconstruction of patriarchy, again, we really did encourage that deconstruction and encourage the flexibility in news gathering and coverage. And I think that those of you who know, it's very difficult as a woman to participate in Checkpoint, for example, unless the show is pre-recorded, because she has to go back home, after 10 o'clock. So those challenges are some of the issues that we tried to raise. So encouraging flexibility in programming. And then we did encourage a couple of things for women leaders to really seek media spaces, be who they are, set their own standards. Do not try to be a man. Do not try to be a man to become relevant. Be who you are and be comfortable in your skin and your body. And that is, and that way we will deconstruct patriarchy. We also did encourage women leaders to seek supportive networks and to actively champion different issues so that they are not defined only in terms of issues that are of immediate relevance to women. They should be interested in issues that are more issues of energy, very important for women, issues of water and health, but also issues of corruption and so on, are also important issues for women, and raise levels of activism in and out of media. That we should actually have more women actively involved in politics, and visible. And I recall the lady in Mombasa. She's not Alo. She's the one that was profiled in Mombasa. Grace, yes, Grace Olo. Yes, I mean, absolutely huge potential. I recall her from her media appearances. I think we need more and more of that. So that was the baseline. When we were saying we are not doing very, very well, I want now Dr. Gadhigi to pick, because we kept monitoring how media were performing. And I think, George, you can now pick it and see from the recent analysis that we did, how are we faring? How are we faring? Are we making strides, or are we still stuck at the pre-July situation? George.
Thank you, Prof. Good morning, everyone. I want to say a lot of the content that we have here has been touched on in different ways, and so I will try not to, be repetitive, but also to say the end line builds on the baseline, what we found in the baseline, so we came back and wanted to check, what happened. I will go straight to the finding, and just say that I think on paper we can see the numbers. Governors, we have 3 women, and in the beginning we didn't have. We have 3 senators, and if you look at those graphs, then you can see in terms of percentage, where are we? And there has been a lot of conversation that, yes, we have the governors, but in the grand scheme of things, where are women standing? They are only, in terms of percentage, we are talking 6%, okay? We are talking 6%. The minimum we would expect is about 33.3%, so that we can, hit the, the bare minimum of the, third. So we have a long way to go. We look at the National Assembly, again, slight improvement. 23 women elected compared to 16, so that's an addition of how many? Of 7. In terms of percentage, what are we talking about? We are moving from 4.5 to 5.2. Is that significant? Yeah, statisticians will say that is significant development. But again, we are trying to shoot to 33.3%, but ideally we should be 50-50, or if not more. So we are still miles, and I think if we look at the, of course, the additional mechanism, we also have some, some improvement there. So we ideally would require about 117 to make a third in the National Assembly, but we are still 41 short. We are 31 women short in the National Assembly for us to hit the 2/3 rule. And this is also after, all the other mechanisms. We've seen some women nominated in different areas. MCAs at the lowest level, I think we had 84 who were elected in competitive election in 2013, and we had an additional 12 in 2017. That is an addition of 12. I think if we were to assign these every year, how many women are we able to, women MCA, we are talking about every year we manage to push 2 women towards MCA position. Again, they stand at 6.62%. That's about 26% below the minimum threshold. More work needs to be done. So how was the coverage, especially compared to the baseline? We saw marginal change in terms of the stories that appeared. And again, it is important for us to mention that in 2016, that was before the campaigns really became heated, and that was also before the party nominations. So there were more political stories that were coming, and that was noted. We looked at and we went with the main print media here and the leading television station. And the Daily Nation had, during the period that we checked, the regularity was 78%. The Star newspaper regularity was at 50%. Then the Standard newspaper was at 28%. Overall, we hit 52%. That means that half of the time there will be, a story on women political leaders. And again, we need to ask the question, is this adequate? So today we have a story. It just means today we have a story, tomorrow we don't have a story. The next day we have a story, the day after we don't have. It's still low, in my opinion, but it's some improvement. Now, on television, we found a number of things. For example, some of the issues that emerged during the television discussions where women leaders were involved had to do with question of women in leadership, the question of safety, and I'm glad that the presentation that came ahead of us addressed this. The question of safety was always there. Women leader victory were covered both at the nomination at the general election. And there was notable improvement in terms of the number of stories that we saw. So we saw additional stories, but we also saw a lot of celebratory stories that we believe are very important in terms of highlighting the strides that are being made, however small they may be. And on TV, we looked at some of the leading programs, and this gives us an interesting picture. On Citizen Cheche, of course, one thing to note with Cheche, one of the, Cheche at least has a female host who sit with 2 gentlemen, but we only found women in 3 out of the 14 programs that we sampled. The other program that we looked at was Victoria Lounge, which focuses on women issues, and it was very encouraging to know that in every program we had a woman. Then we looked at Press Pass on NTV that airs every Monday, and out of 9 episodes we saw that 4 had women panelists. But again, we need to go deeper and look. Usually they have about 5 panelists, so most of the time you only find 1 woman. But this is slight improvement from what we saw during the baseline, where we, in many instances, we didn't have a single woman. Then, interesting, Citizen Extra. I think those who, Citizen has been doing more political coverage, and Citizen Extra was being aired especially around the morning hours to early afternoon. We sampled 15 episodes. We didn't have a single woman contributor on that. And looking at the newspaper, we looked at focus, and we use focus here to try and establish the level of importance that is accorded to a story. And if you look at those graphs, the blue one represents the end line, and what color is that? The orange one represents represent the baseline. And so we have 3 levels of focus. The high focus, which basically we are talking about high importance, mid importance, and low importance. We noted that there was a shift towards more high focus story. That means women were given more space. Women, for example, were included in, for example, graphics more than they were. So we see that movement from median focus in the baseline towards high focus in the end line. So 50 compared to 38%, and that is significant. But so we ate into the medium focus, but the low focus remain pretty much unchanged. I think it would have been more interesting to see us eating into the low focus, or we end up not having low focus. But it's still some coverage. Then we looked at the at the tone of the stories that were presented. Are they positive? Are they neutral? Are they negative? When they are positive, of course, they are encouraging. They are showing some growth. If they are neutral, they are more likely to be objective, not a lot of value judgment. And then negative stories are those that cover women in negative light. And I think this is interesting because we see again. Growth into more positive story. So we had 59% compared to 38%, which pretty much replicate the earlier graph that we had. Then we see the neutral stories diminishing, but we didn't notice any negative story. I think that is very encouraging. Then we looked at perceptions. How are women leaders perceived? And we talked to different people. We talked to journalists, we talked to editors, we talked to media specialists, and also compared the data that we had. Our analysis shows that the level of coverage remains low, And these also include the coverage that you see on the social media. In fact, we went to the social media handle of the leading media houses, and just you can easily, for example, on Twitter, you can do a quick search on women leadership or women, and almost there is none of those mentions. Then women leaders and issues continue to be feminized. They continue to be feminized. There are issues that are defined as women issues, and there are issues that have to do with the general public, which actually are masculine in nature. Then also one of the things that we found is the high propensity to bring irrelevant issues. So a woman makes, if a woman leader or a female leader makes certain comment, a lot of interpretations that will be brought in the story have nothing to do with what they said. So you find a lot of issues to do with marital, their marital position being brought in. So all these irrelevant aspects are brought in, and then they tend to mask the important issues that are addressed. Women political leaders remain cautious in their engagement still. On social media, they talk about receipts, the evidence. So you have to be careful of what you say, because you never know when it will be brought back against you. They're still tagging with negative news and negative issues. I think we all remember, for example, one of the dominant line that was used to fight, Laboso, where she is married and so on. But even in terms of competition, political competition, it's very hard to see a political leader, or it was very hard to see a contestant who didn't have negative baggage. But when it came to women, they were more likely, the baggage was more likely to follow them. And we can see, for example, with the two other governors, apart from Laboso. So their corruption cases kept being, talked about. Yet, if you look at all the other male contestants, nobody was talking about it. And in fact, at the political party level, we see this being conveniently masked, and it was not an issue. Then on the question of representation and diversity, we saw that, yes, you have a number of women leaders who are consistently covered, but you can, whenever we interviewed people, it's interesting. You would think people are reading from the same script. They will tell you who is out there. People will talk about Raboso, Millie Odhiambo, very few women who are consistently covered on the media. But this also talks about the limited news sourcing, and this goes to the journalists and editors. Where do we always run to get the news? So you find limited news sourcing, and I think this is also a huge problem. Even as we celebrate those who have been highlighted, who are out there, the problem is you find the journalists will always go to this one person. So you keep wondering, isn't there any other Kenyan or any other person who can comment on this issue? But also what women are doing is not known. I keep asking, how many people know that Wavinya Ndeti is a computer scientist? How many people know that she's a computer scientist? Do we know the professional background of these women leaders? They're just there, but you can also see in terms of the way political leaders market themselves. Most of the men, before, in every session, they will always say, I'm a lawyer, I am a financial expert. We see those identities there. But I think it's also important for those in the media to be highlighting this, so that we don't just see political leaders. We don't even know the CVs of a lot of these women leaders, where they are coming from. So even as much as we say they deserve to be there, what are we providing? What evidence are we giving out there? So this is not done. Then we looked at the slotting of the stories in terms of is the story that addressed women leadership put at the national slot or county slot or the county roundup, And actually here we see some shift. At the end line, we see more stories at, shifting, not significantly though, but we see stories at the national level declining, but we see more stories at the county level. This might explain, the nature of competition, political competition, because a lot of it, of course, is at the county, and slight improvement in terms of what we see as county roundup. These are usually the small blurbs that we see on the newspaper. So no significant change. Again, on representation and diversity in the newspaper, it's generally limited. We see lack of consistent presence in the media, but also that women were not covered extensively outside politics. What is these other things that they are doing? We are not seeing, and then again, limited sourcing. I think one of the things that keeps coming back is a question of the gender dimensions and stereotype, and I think this is one of the biggest burden. For example, gender stereotypes. In gender stereotypes and in the gender dimension, is we found that women are more likely to face violence. So, with Honorable Passaris, Honorable Sarah Korere, Miri Odhiambo, Maishon Reshomo, and so on. And these were huge, the huge publicized violence. But also what we found is, in most cases, even when women leaders are violated, they prefer not to go public. And the reason is, when they go public, they are seen as weak. Instead of looking at what is actually happening, we tend to look at women as trying to get sympathy. So what they decide is to stay with, with this violence, and they don't report it. So only some of the huge or the huge incidences tend to be highlighted. And you hear statements like, if you get into the kitchen, you should be ready to face the heat. This is very common, but there are so many cases of violence, and it was covered, of course. Women are expected to be humble. They shouldn't shout. They shouldn't, raise their voice or temper. When they do that, they are emotional. But male leaders are not emotional. Extreme pressure and twisted stories, we found that. We also found that, and this was addressed by Dr. Iria, lack of resources still remains a hindrance. But then, even when they have resources, then they are put on the defensive end to explain which man, who is this man who is pushing your campaign. And you've seen that question being asked to Passaris, Esther Kihika, and all that. So women, ideally, in this discourse, they not only have resources, but they are not expected to have resources. And then, the embedded patriarchal networks are very hard to penetrate, and they are all over. They are in the media houses, they are in the political parties, they are within the fixers, and this makes it very difficult for women to thrive in the media. But media remain extremely unfriendly. The manuals, and in fact, if you looked at the period almost next to the election, you have all these men who hog. I always talk about hogging, because these guys, they are always in every media house. They will be on KTN in the morning, very early in the morning at 6 a.m., at 10 you'll find them on KTN. But also and sorry to say this, you listen to the content, it is not that one has, that important contribution to make. A lot of them are hollow, and some of them are our colleagues. But they want to be on every set. And I interviewed a few, and I kept asking, why do you keep going to these sets? Why must you be there? One of the things that I've realized is a lot of men, and you can quote me, they use their presence in the media as a leverage. And some of them go to political parties to try and get some leverage, to get some contract. We know that is happening. But then it is only people in the media houses who can deal with this. So we saw so many manners. During the debates, I think those of you who observed, we saw that the presidential debate, in quote, there were 2 male moderators. And I think for me that was a low point. The presidential? The presidential.
Yes, it was a presidential.
Yeah? Yeah? So I want to specifically point where we had Linus Kaikai and Joe Ageo. And I think some people... yes. Yes. It's... So there were questions. But if you also looked at the sidelines, who we had there, there are answers to be provided. And also, we say that women generally disappeared from the TV screen during the high season. And I think women still talk about the media not being as welcoming in terms of a space for a public discourse. Women leaders do not thrive very well in those shouting matches. But I think also, if you have observed, you will find, I think, a lot of panelists go there with a very clear intention, for example, to bowl for a certain political party. And so when you're trying to be objective, it is very difficult. And women, most women contributors, for example, talk about being sandwiched between those shouting matches. The timing remains off. A lot of these discussions happen late at night. And that makes it difficult. It brings the issues of safety into play. But I think we have noted that there is no effort to reach women and connect. And I want to, if you have observed the number of times we have had political leaders via video, we see men being, and especially the leading political leaders, being reached, connected through video. But if then we are arguing that women are not able to make it to the TV station, then why can they Skype in? How many have Skyped in up to this point? I think we are still lagging behind. And the standards are still selective. Now, I want to come back to the roundtables that Media Focus did with editors and journalists. And when we talked to those who participated, they said these were timely and they helped to amplify the gender issues that we are facing. And also the roundtables provided a challenge to editors and journalists in terms of their work when it comes to looking at the gender lenses. Many said that they changed their approaches, they are more conscious and they are trying to cover women. There is increased conversation. This was interesting, especially in the media houses where where journalists also are now challenging the gender positions. So from the roundtable, a few recommendations were made, and these include that we should create more forums for engagement. We should work to advocate concrete goals that include gender policies in the newsrooms. Most journalists say that many newsrooms do not have gender policies. And also it is important to provide funding for activities and also for journalists to cover some of these stories. Many journalists want to cover the stories, but they do not have the resources to do so. What does media need to do? And if you look at these recommendations, most of them sort of mirror what we had in the baseline. It remains important to give equal coverage and cover those who are on the margins. That we need to realize that there is a group that is on the margins, so they should always be given that platform. We need to be sensitive in our coverage, and by being sensitive, realize that we may not apply the same standard and come with different with different leaders and have the same result. We need to create spaces for women leaders to express themselves, and we've seen programs that have, that are women specific have thrived, and they have given that space. That we need to make deliberate effort to make sure that the threshold of coverage is achieved. What if we said every panel should have a woman? Of course, the question is, how do we actualize? But is it impossible to do? I think it can be done. We need to seek and incentivize women voices. Why do we want women to go on these platforms if the first and the second and the third comment will go to a man, and so the woman will only comment towards the end, and when it comes to closing, then male editors and journalists need to be conscious. We need to facilitate women to participate in media and also adopt formats that are friendly for women. What needs to be done by women leaders again? I think this came out especially for those working with women candidates. It is important to accept professional advice on how to carry yourself, be aggressive and seek media spaces, form in solidarity, refusing to be governed by male standards, and also continue to proactively champion different issues in the society. For this work to be done, there is also need for support from donors, civil society, and other well-wishers. Support women leaders' engagement, and I think we just had some, good news. Mobilize resources, which is being done. Yeah. Continue to promote policy formulation and support. Support collaboration with different organizations. Work with political parties need to be done, and in conclusion, that is women leaders' coverage in the media can be shifted through deliberate efforts. And that is the end of our presentation.
Sorry for rushing you last phase, because again we have a panel to run. So again, a clap for George. Yeah, we are making strides, but there's still quite a bit of work to be done. I'd like now to invite the panelists. I'd like to invite Yvonne Okwara, senior editor and news anchor, news host at KTN, now for 2022. And I really would like to start with Yvonne. Because I have really wanted to hang out with you on these matters. And I know as a journalist, you face tremendous challenges and opportunities. I know personally your position on women and leadership. If you could just share with us some of the opportunities you see for us going forward, as well as some of the challenges that you face, and then we'll come back later to see what we can do actually to mitigate those challenges. Yvonne.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm glad to be here. I apologize for my outburst a short while ago. I'm a woman and I get very passionate about these things. Good morning, everyone. So in covering women, there's a number of things that are interesting. When you get good women panelists, you get really good women panelists. But a lot of the times it's difficult, and rightfully so. We end up being bashed, and there are sometimes when we drop the ball. There are certain headlines that we put in that have no place being there. We generally fall into the same stereotypes that exist out there in society, because we are part of society, we are human. So we are raised and conditioned much in the same way that everybody else is. And we bring those biases and stereotypes to the newsroom and to our offices. In covering this last election, we dropped the ball a couple of times, that's for sure. We were obsessed with the Waiguru Karua race. We, just like everybody else, turned it into a catfight. I believe we had a headline like that. And we have great internal conversations about this. Some of those who work with us here will tell you. Julie will tell you about the heat that we raised on a WhatsApp group about some of these headlines. But that's what happens in print. But on television, I've seen a number of the issues that have been brought here about the timing being a little difficult. It is. But it is what it is. I have a show from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Sundays. I now have a new one on Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. It's difficult for women. So what do? Do I move my show to 2 in the afternoon? Because there's got to be a show at that time, regardless of what we think. There's morning shows which are equally difficult for women. That's 6 to around 9 or 10. That's also difficult for women because of the roles that women have to play. But so what do? Do we not have a show from 6 to 10? Or do we band all the women into a time frame that works for them? Yes, but then we will still get the same complaints about some of these shows not having equal representation. The other challenge that we face is women and the ones that we pick falling into those very stereotypes themselves as panelists. So I won't name names, but there's a panelist on a colleague's show, Asha Mwilu, had a show called The Round Table in the lead up to the election. A panelist came late, and this was at a friendly hour. The shooting was done at 11 a.m. She came over 2 hours late. She was at the salon. So that is one. I have tried with another famous personality, whom again I will not name because I don't want us to get into victimizing people. But I tried in vain, and this was last year, to get this woman on my show. The conditions I could not even justify to management. It's fine, the one about transport and getting her to Nairobi and where to stay, no problem. The other one was, oh, but you know, you anchors, you have hair, you have makeup, so I would like to go to a salon of my choice at the company's cost. I want to have my skin done, my hair done, my nails done. Now I can justify transport, but I can't go to the MD and say, let's fill in this. What is this for? It's hard to just get them out on the campaign trail. This was another beautiful story that we had, and it was given to me by the now Member of Parliament for Nyeri Town, Ngunjiri Wambugu, during the, and this will be the last so that I can give everybody else a chance to speak. During the nominations, the primaries, the political party primaries, there was a beautiful story of an MCA in Nyeri, beautiful. The lady had just had a baby, but was on the campaign trail throughout. She had the baby on her back. I'm sure you know the story. She had the baby on her back, and when she would go up to speak to, Wananchi, she'd actually give someone, and she came Toto, and she'd go up and she would, get this done. She won the nomination, and in strongholds like these, winning the nomination is as good as winning the election. And so Ngunjiri tells me, this is a great story, and I'm like, yeah, this is fantastic. And we tried in vain to get her to do the story. We convinced her, I begged. I pleaded, I begged. We never got the story. This is what we face on a day.
She's been in the political space for quite a while, and therefore it's really a pleasure to again have you. I want to shift a little from media to political parties. Okay. And because you see, it seems to me that the way we solve the problem is to look at various institutions. So we have the media as an institution, but we also have political parties as a critical institution for opening up opportunities for women leaders. Would it be fair to say that political parties in Kenya is really men's club? And what would it take? What would it take for women to get deeply involved in the political party, hierarchies and so on? I remember there was a time we used to have women's leagues and so on. Mm-hmm. They still exist. If you can respond to that.
Thank you very much, Professor Kimani. I need to start by saying that I am a linguist, somebody who works in communication and has been for a while very keen to deal with issues of governance. I appreciate the opportunity because I believe that I am seated where I am, courtesy of the media. Those of you will remember that the late Jerry Okungu, who was at KBC, invited me when I was only a master's student to a program. I certainly believe that because I said yes, and I went to that program, I got the visibility that has brought me to this day. Now, coming to political parties, I would say this. There is a sense in which the key issues that came out as we discussed, including even what Yvonne shared, are at play. And there are three points really that I had thought as I listened that I would have liked to get us to look at, particularly given what Jennifer told us, that women need to rise. That you really, when you're talking about power and you're talking about position, then it really is not given to you. And that most of the time, there is, as you could tell, listening to Yvonne, the media and political parties are looking out. They would like to see who it is that they can task with this. And I want to come back to political parties, therefore, and say that it is indeed true that the leadership, the hierarchy, and the mechanisms and ways of engagement tend to be largely male, because we have had more men than women in leadership, and that there is a sense in which when you bring women, you tend to put them to the league. There are leagues. I know that the ODM, which is the party that nominated me, does have an Orange Women League, which league I was a founder of in 2007 when I also ran for office. I think I would like to bring us to three key issues. One, that we really must focus on women's leadership development. The key challenge is that women tend to bring their gender identity on the table, and I include myself. If we get chance, I can tell you my stories, and you'll see. In terms of theory and knowledge, the women are aware that leadership is about influence. It's gender neutral, because a leader has confidence, has answers, has solutions. A leader doesn't have to shout. A leader doesn't have to have a deep voice. A leader really just needs to show that they can offer a solution, or that they can be willing to listen to others. Unfortunately, because of the socialization, women bring to the table their gender identity. So the identity that comes and that is seen a lot by the media, a lot by the political parties, a lot by people who quickly want to know who is it who we can send. They see the woman. And I think most of you will see, I know I'm in a bit of a fix to say this. I keep wondering that I got nominated, so I thank God that I did. But sometimes I think it becomes a bit of a burden, because there are some things I really find myself difficult to say. But you will find that increasingly now women tend to wait to be nominated. I think it would be a good thing that women who get nominated become specially elected, because they did not set out to be nominated, but they set out to be elected, or they set out to lead the party, or they set out to lead. And they then got the attention or found that they could serve this. So my first point really is, as we go along, and I was really, really grateful and happy to be part of this conversation, because I can see the one way we have to practically go is what programmatic and what kind of media programs we can provide that would enable women to rise, to become leaders. Let their leadership identity go ahead and not their gender identity. And I think that's really, when we look about it, when we think about it, even when we look at the women leagues, I have found on occasion that they tend to sit back. Because if you're in a political party and you're in the national executive committee of the party, or you are at the hierarchy, the summit of the party, or if you look and see the principles, for example, like if I were to talk about NASA, because I'm in NASA, I really don't see why the women who are in leadership don't just go there and join. They will not block you, by the way. If you went out there, NASA is out there, you have all these 5 men, and they know the public, the society is saying, why are there so many men? If there are, and there are women in NASA who could go there, but they don't. Because most of them think people are going to say, who are you? You're a woman. So my first point is, let's really celebrate leadership as gender neutral. And part of the challenge, and Yvonne raised this, is how we are to work on our configuration, because whether in the media or in the political parties, we tend to look at women in the lens and we say that's a woman, we think of the female. But I think we want to keep looking and say we are looking for leaders, and then we see leaders will be men and women, and we get the women to shake or to put at the backlog their femininity and to bring forward their leadership. The second one, really, when we're looking to political parties, is also to remember, and this is something that I believe on my journey from Beijing and my journey talking about women's leadership and all our caucus trying to get women to lead, was what struck me that I think women need to be aware that in the political party, there's going to be dominance at 5 levels. And women individually need to know when these are being meted out at them and how to respond. But other women, not that we are saying we don't want to work with men, but the way society works, they are likely to see one of them being brought down by one of these, and they need to figure out how it is that they will support that woman and not be used. And I think this is really like the final point I want to make. That when you're looking at these methods of gender dominance, one is making invisible. And I think there are examples where sometimes in the media, we'll see that the woman is on the panel, but the focus is on her legs. She's wearing a short dress, and you're looking at her legs, and then there's the shoes, and you're wondering, at the end of the day, this woman could have a lot of content and substance, but there's a way in which everybody's mind is going to how nice their legs are. And I know at USIU, I was once reprimanded by my colleagues, because in '97, when Charity Ngilu wanted to run for president, my colleagues, Professor Katama Mkangi and Munyoki, told me that her greatest qualification was her legs, her beautiful legs. So I think we need to remember methods of making women invisible, and we need to be aware that we don't support this. So if you're interviewing a woman or there is a coverage, we need to appreciate her beauty, but let's get the focus out of that. The second one, which is very closely linked, is making ridiculous, because I know the example that Yvonne gave is a bit extreme, but I do know that when women have asked for hours, for example, of deliberation in Parliament, to be revised so that they are a little more cognizant of the different roles. Because women generally are not going to be staying out up to midnight. They might not necessarily want to be in bars or other places. And therefore, we fought a long way to try and say, if there is a National Assembly, then let hours be hours that are sort of manageable. Because there will even be women who have children, who have childcare. And I think it's important for us to remember that women get ridiculed. Because I don't know the people who say, so why don't you just first of all have children, finish that business first, and then come, making the woman look ridiculous. So we need to look out for that. And that links to the third one, burdening women with guilt and shame. As I was listening to the presentation, I want to thank you very much. And I think it was spot on. I want to congratulate you when you engaged the narrative. I don't think it's wrong to do that, because the story that comes around needs to be one that does not burden women with guilt and shame. I think, in my experience, part of why women withdraw from engaging even with political parties is when you work in the political party and you tend to be around, you have to be seen, you have to be visible, you have to be with the political party leadership. And then people decide you're a girlfriend, you're something else. So women are burdened with guilt and shame. So women do need to look out, especially women who are in the media, who are in the political party, who are in other areas. Please do not also join that process of burdening women with guilt and shame. The fourth is double punishment. They're very closely linked. Whether you're a woman, you turn up, you keep staying in meetings. I think you could look at Esther Passaris, look at Millie Odhiambo, look at Shebesh, look at all these women around, Governor Waiguru, Governor Charity Ngilu. There are ways in which they're going to be doubly punished. You know, there are women, like was said clearly, you know, there are men who had the corruption issues. There were ways in which in Kenya, corruption kind of intertwined and embedded itself in the governance structure. Suddenly it becomes the women's issue, irrespective of their political party. Because the women will be on this divide, And another woman is on that divide, but it is the women who get doubly punished. And so as I conclude, Prof, I would say that when we look at political parties, I do agree that we need to engage and find space for women. As somebody who has been in the political party quite a bit and has even sat at the National Executive Committee at one point, I'd want to reiterate that if we can get women to be clear more of their identity as leaders, and then we can get them to watch out for these methods of dominance, which they themselves can project or others can, the political party is more than ready to get women who will not be a burden, because they will not want people they carry, they will want people who they will work with. And I think they really just have to make sure that they have information and that they can prove to be people who can represent the parties. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. Again, minimization of the focus on the body and acceleration on the focus on leadership, focusing much more on those qualities. I want to get to Barbara, and I mean, obviously, I mean, you work within civil society, and I want to go to what our role is within civil society in view of, one, making it possible for women to be visible in the media. If the media is ready and women are not absolutely ready, what is it that we can actually do to ready them, you know, so that we are not, it's not too difficult for media houses. And also, you know, considering FIDA's mandate on violence on women, and also thinking through Christine's presentation, what is it that we can do as a society? Because it is in our interest as a society to have more and more women in leadership positions. If you can give your comments, then after her comments, I think I'll just open it up for interaction. I think it's easier that way.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. We've just been challenged that we rarely say who we are and what we are doing. So that's what I'll start with. I'm an advocate of the High Court, and a lawyer, of course, by that virtue, and the Deputy Director of FIDA Kenya. So I'll just go straight into some of the initiatives that we think then as FIDA Kenya, and of course representing the women and the rights of women in this country. FIDA, like in the previous election, I mean, they just concluded election, we were able to train about 96 women in about 8 counties, and all these women were those women that came out and they wanted to vie for positions, various positions, be it governor level, senators, parliament, women, I mean, MPs, MCAs, and out of that, at least we actually saw from a presentation here that we've been lucky to get about 9 selected, 9 who were elected and 3 were nominated into the county assemblies. And what does this tell you? The women, this time compared to 2013, we have seen an improvement, both in the confidence in wanting to vie for political positions, but at the same time, we've seen a lot of challenges that they've faced. And some of the challenges have been alluded to here. I was just speaking to one of the ladies that had tried to vie for senatorship in Nairobi, Susan, and she was telling me some of the questions that she was asked is, how then do you want to vie? You're young, aren't you planning to get married? Aren't you planning to get children? And you know, that's a question that is really so, you know, it's so gender, I would call it very gender insensitive, in the sense that that is a role that a woman has, but at the same time, it does not impede her from taking office at any position. And of course, that is some of the things that probably were used against her. So for us as FIDA, then what do we see as that which we can do to assist these women? And I was just speaking to her and telling her, this is the time. And it was also said by one of the presenters here, this is the time to start profiling themselves for 2022. Keep engaging in positive talk, engaging with the media also. And Yvonne, if you require people to come and speak on your show, really, like FIDA Kenya has 1,100 women who are members of FIDA. So at times you can reach out to us, and depending on what the topical issue is, we are able to provide these particular women to come on the show. Of course, it would require prior preparation because of the challenges that come with, some of the roles that we have as women. But if we have prior preparation and, of course, exciting them to the fact that this is what is meant for you, taking up this particular role or profiling yourself in this particular edge, then it would help. So we've faced those challenges, yes, but then we are trying and really hard talking to women. One of the strategies that FIDA has moving forward is to ensure that now we start speaking, not only to those that have been elected through inductions on what is expected of you, because we know that now moving forward, once you take office, and Prof, I'm sure these are some of the challenges you're going to face moving forward. Once you take office, what is expected of you? And we'll be battled in many ways, many fronts that will be different from what the men will be battled on. But ours is to now ensure that we walk the journey with you, and of course walk the journey with those that tried and are still interested in 2022, so that then we start profiling them at this point. And for us, it's engaging with the media in a very, we've engaged with the media, and for us it's to engage with them just to ensure that then they are speaking to these women. I was telling Susan she can even find herself in some projects that are running in the country that touch on women and children, and make it like her niche, which then gives her that profile when she goes out and she needs to speak to the media. Shying away from the media, yes, that is happening quite a bit, but then it is just a matter of explaining to the women why is this happening? Why do you need to do this?
Thank you, Barbara. I would like now to open up for interaction with the panelists. I think you've gotten quite a bit from their comments. If we can have the next 10 minutes to take questions, yeah. Please give us your name and then the question, and then we'll give the panelists the opportunity to respond.
Morning. My name is Julie Masiga. I'm a print journalist, only very recently a broadcast journalist. And rather than a question, I just want to support Yvonne when it comes to women. I used to host a show on KTN News called News Sources, and it was an all-female panel. And it was in direct response to the criticism that only men are on panels. And all women, yes. So you would think that we'd have no problem finding these women, but it was actually very hard for us to do so. It was not for lack of trying. We would try every single week in advance, send out emails, make phone calls. As a matter of fact, there was a whole list that was compiled on social media about women who had put themselves down and were willing to go on TV. We went through that list, called numbers, maybe 30 or 40. I think I got maybe 2. People would cancel on me at 3 a.m. in the morning. Other people would say they got bronchitis. Some would say it's late at night, it's too far. There are very many excuses. So it's not for a lack of trying that we don't have women on these panels. It's a matter of women putting themselves out there and then following through with that commitment. And also we value the opinion of women. My dear friend, George Gadhigi, who I work with in another context, said that we ask them questions at the tail end of interviews and then we have them wrap up the conversation. That is not true at all. Watch any program, Checkpoint, even News Sources, we value the opinions of these women. That's why we get them on, because they have a different perspective on politics, because we always have the men speaking from their point of view. Women have a unique contribution to make because they come from a different, their lives are different. They have families, they have children, they're thinking about health, education, infrastructure, because they're thinking about families. So that brings a nuance to politics. So yes, we engage them and we value their opinion. Also, we do try and accommodate women in terms of transport. As far as hair and makeup goes, I'm not too sure about that. But in terms of transport and trying to have them at times which are convenient to them, yes, we definitely do. But speaking for myself, when I first got into this TV thing, I think I got pregnant shortly thereafter. For a lot of that time, I was pregnant until about 8 months of being an elephant on TV. And then I went and had my baby, came back, she was about 2 or 3 months. Again, because that was something that I wanted to do, so I made a space for that. Right now, I still have a young child, I'm a single mother, but somehow I still managed to do it. So it's a matter of, do you want to do it? Do you think it's important? And then you do it. Things cannot always work around us, let me put it like that. And finally, women need to say yes. When somebody asks you to be on TV, say yes. Don't think about it. Say yes, but say yes prepared, because we have too few women representing us. So an opportunity is an opportunity. If you are prepared, take it. Don't think and try and make excuses. Whatever else you think, whatever is holding you back, like fear, for example, just deal with that and put yourself out there. Just like we're having nominated women to parliament, and I read from the report that once you nominate a woman, her chances for being elected are much higher, which means you need to put yourself, get your foot in the door, and then the other opportunities are going to open up. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. And it is very true. Affirmative action actually works. It works. So present yourself, become visible. Then, I mean, this, you know, many of you are from civil society, so we're actually constructing messages that we'll be using along the way, isn't it? Yeah. So they need to seize opportunities. Additional comments, reactions? Yes, from the gentleman.
Good morning. My name is Mustafa Mbaru from Islamia TV. I wonder, every time the election is nearby, you find that men, they want their men to be runmate. Why is it that we don't have equality, that whoever wants to be a president can choose a female to be a vice president, because we have so many big numbers of women?
Okay, good question. When shall we ever have at that high level? Yes, my friend.
My name is Julia Wanjiko from KBC, a radio producer. I want to start by backing Yvonne that it is what it is. I produced the breakfast show, and I think I've said in this forum a number of times before that this excuse that the show is too early, it's the breakfast show. So I'm not going to move the conversation to noon so that you can come. And there are women who make it. You know, we are doing our part. We are ensuring that we invite you early. Sometimes we'll go as far as getting you an Uber. But like Julie there said, just begin by saying yes. I want to narrate something very short. Recently, just before the August 8th elections, there was this exclusive interview that was granted by State House, I think the State Lodge in Kakamega. KBC sent an all-male crew to Kakamega. So in the departmental meeting, I asked, is this representative of the workforce in radio? It is not. We have female, we have broadcasters, we have presenters, we have technical crew. But you see, what I was trying to tell the department head is that this is about perception. You see, because of the way you perceive that function, it informs who you send. Yeah? But if it is the nurses' strike, you come and tell me, Julia, go. Yeah, we hear they're going to the Council of Governors, go. Because I'm a woman, it's automatic to you that health is what I'm good at. So, and also, something about what he said about the presidential level, I, for a fact, Yvonne, thought you should have moderated the Raila debate, in quotes. Again, maybe it goes to perception because of how maybe people perceived the debate with Ekuru and Wainaina and Dida. Dida didn't make it, and the other, yeah, we can't even remember their names. But I thought you handled it so well. I even wrote about it in my blog that I think you should have moderated that. Thank you.
Yeah, and she will be moderating many others. Additional comments, questions? Yes.
Mine is actually, oh, sorry. Good morning, everyone. Sorry. My name is Masin Joroge from People Daily. Mine is actually not a question. I would have wanted to get more clarification from George here about the findings for the research. Because when you say that the coverage has gone up, I think to about 52%, was it positive coverage? Because you said, I think you did a research on the Nation, Standard, and I think the Star, and from the findings there was, I think, 52% coverage. So was it positive or negative coverage?
Yeah, he will be coming back to respond to that. Can we take maybe two and then we'll come back the panel? Yeah, we have the back and we have Ursula, and yeah, I think we can take the three.
three.
Yeah.
So do I start from?
Let's start from my sister.
I can't fail to mention that Mrs. Odumbe was my high school teacher, so it was, it was a great surprise for me to see her
Thank you
here.
for teaching well.
Thank you, Frenny, for making me proud. Frenny was my student at Alliance Girls High School some years back. Yeah, my name is Dorcas Odumbe. A journalist, a teacher, now a bit in politics. Mine is also just an observation. I worked in the print media for quite some time, and I specifically edited a magazine called Eve at the Standard, and it was just specific for women. And I want to concur with my colleagues who've spoken here about getting a woman to just have that platform to put their case across. I have a friend who runs a kindergarten, a very successful kindergarten. I remember once I just decided I need to give my friend this opportunity to, apart from advertising her school, to show that a woman can also make it on her own. And she simply told me that she's having issues with her husband, and this is not the right time to do her story, because the husband's relatives will see like she's trying to show off that her business is picking up and all that. So those are just some of the issues that women really have. And this is, I mean, it's a free opportunity to advertise your school and your business and everything. That is from the journalism aspect. Now, coming to the politics. Now, I'm still in media, but now working with a party, a political party, and I happened to have been, maybe call it fortunate, to be on the party list, although much at the lower, towards the bottom of the party list. But it's an opportunity anyway. I mean, many people wish to be on the party list. Then it happened that the day the list went to the media houses, one of my former colleagues saw my name and called me. In fact, I was fortunate enough for my name to appear, my photo to appear on the paper with the Zanis and, the big names. And the headline was, Uhuru, Raila, Uhuru allies, top party lists, And my photo was there. So in fact, my phone was very busy that morning. Everyone is calling me, oh, congratulations and all that. In my head, I'm like, I wish you knew I'm number 11. Anyway. But this colleague calls me and tells me, Dorcas, how are you? I said, fine. Then he tells me, whoever you're sleeping with, please continue sleeping with them.
Oh my goodness.
Then I asked him, what do you mean? Your name is on the party list. I said, yes. But that actually my name was on the list that is supposed to be the gender top-up. So it is for women only. There's no way a man's name was going to be there. So I asked whose name is supposed to be here. I went to school. I have a brain. I mean, I can comfortably represent my party in the Senate. So it doesn't mean that I don't have what it takes. So does it? And this is a journalist, a senior journalist, telling me that. And these are the people we expect to cover us. I mean, if I made it to the Senate, Professor here made it to Parliament, these are the same journalists we expect to cover her story. So as they're covering her story, at the back of their minds, it is that she made it there, not because she has what it takes, but because she probably slept with somebody. That is, I mean, to me, that was just a put-off. Then within the party itself also, we have issues also that make us women sometimes now, we pull back a bit because we sort of like fight amongst ourselves when you seem to be the new kid in the block within the party. The other people start wondering, who is she? Who is she? And in fact, when I applied for the nomination, someone actually asked, what has she done for the party that she thinks she should be nominated? I mean, we're saying we fight for our space. Everybody, I mean, anybody was allowed to apply. And you have to prove that you have what it takes. But when we women ourselves, we're still within the parties, and I'm sure the same happens in all the other political parties, not necessarily the party that I'm in. We are fighting amongst ourselves. Prof, I don't know if you've experienced that, but it's like everybody wants to fight for their space. So even I want to prove to you how the party leader is closer to me, that he can be closer to you. You cannot access him as much as I can access him, and all that. So these are some of the things that, I mean, women, we are facing so many challenges from back and front and everywhere else. But these are some of the things we need to look at.
Oh,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Dorcas. I think Ursula, we can have to Ursula, yeah.
Okay, good morning. Yeah, my name is Ursula Bahati. I'm the gender specialist for National Democratic Institute. And I think we've worked with quite a number of partners here in terms of the preparation process that we did to ensure that women are able to uptake some of the positions. And one of the critical components that we are dealing with is the media and communications aspect of the elections preparation. And I would say that all the issues that have come out from the endline survey are some of the issues that we were facing in terms of engaging with women. And I see this as an opportunity in terms of moving forward, because what we need to do is we need to develop a women leadership development program that is able to incorporate the gender and the gender vis-a-vis media visibility of women. Because as we move forward, we've already begun doing induction for the women who were able to be elected, and elected, but also the nominated ones. And we have over 556 women that we need to be dealing with. 556 is looking at the nominated only. I think if I had the figures, I would have given you those who were elected. But we can see this is really a huge, huge, huge number. And in our sessions last week, we realized that the media component is still very weak, especially in terms of public speaking, in terms of articulation of issues, in terms of even the personal branding of the women. So this is really an opportunity. As we say, as a professor said, affirmative action works. It really works. And really, we must develop programs that will ensure that the 556 are able to transcend into elective positions come 2022. Because unlike the year 2013, and all of you would remember everybody was trying to test what devolution was, the caliber of the members of National Assembly that we got, people would just say, wow, is this the type of leadership that we need? But this time, for sure, we have even PhD holders in the as members of county assembly. We have teachers, we have people with masters. So we have really a critical team of women who are really enlightened and ready to learn. So this is the opportunity for us. So let's move away and get out, map out the country and ensure that we are also part of the induction, but we are also hand-holding them towards ensuring that we retain them come 2022. So that is for programming purposes, and I think it's really opportune that we have this endline survey, but it can also inform us in terms of moving forward. And let's not wait till 2022 for us to begin these programs. We need to begin now. So if there are any development partners here, that is a gap that we really need to work on. So let's all work together and ensure that we are able to reach out to these women, especially at the induction phase, because you can only get things rightly done if you do it at the inception, because then they will understand their roles. And I'm saying this because at the end of 2016, even 17, some of the previous women who were in the county assembly, at the end of the 5 years, most of them, you ask them, what was your role? They still didn't understand what their role was. They were not able to tell you, this is what my role was supposed to be. So the best thing is, let's begin early, let's bring in the gender aspects, let's bring in the media, publicity, and also the confidence building for them to be able to articulate the development issues in their respective counties.
Thanks,
Thank
Bahati.
you.
Thank you so much. Let's take from our sister at the back. Yeah, I guess we're wrapping up now. If you can make your comments a little brief.
Good morning. I'm Mariam Ahmed from Islamia TV. Mine goes to Professor Jacqueline. I wonder what we should be doing with these women, because you said we need to engage and get space for women. I have a program for women specifically, known as Mwanamke Mahiri. But the problem is, whenever you call them, they are never ready to come, except for Honorable Pasaris. At least she came to my show. Now we need the way forward on how to engage them. Thank you.
Yeah, straightforward. We can take, if she was pretty brief, that's good. If you can make yours also very brief, then we'll come back to you guys.
Okay, good morning, guys. My name is Ruth Masime. I work with ActionAid. I'm the head of policy. Congratulations, Professor Jacqueline. Yvonne, we are very proud of you. And of course, FIDA molded me to where I am. So, yes, congratulations. I'll be very brief. The first one is, I'm glad that this forum is starting to look at election as a cycle. So that we do not wait until 2021 or 2020 for us to realize, hey, where are the women who are running for political position? Can we profile them? Can we get the story? We start at the election circle right now. After this election, we have to do the audit, look at what's coming out, look at exactly what we're seeing here. Such figures are very good, such information is very good. It gives us a basis on how we should start programming moving forward, and the bigger participation in the election cycle. And so that is also to say, even because all these things probably will need lots of network, lots of integration and working together, but also some funds. So the development partner, like it has been said earlier, that is also something to note. And the other thing is just being able to focus on education and training. I was in a forum last week, and I was just trying to get the level of education or the level of awareness on women's rights. It was a group of men, and we asked these men, do you think a woman should be disciplined in any way? And there is this man that carried his hand and said, yes, women should be disciplined. And I was very eager to want to know what would he say that women should be disciplined. And he said, look here, as here we are trying to advocate for women's rights, but there is this woman who was who came in a panelist of people that were coming to map out issues for the Constitution. And when we told her that women should not be beaten, she said, no, that is part of our culture, that women should be beaten. So why can't this woman who was telling us that not be beaten? You get it? So then it just poses the question of the training, the education, and working with not just the political, those who are going to vie or those who are going to run, because they have to be elected. Even the voters, you have to bring them in the loop for them to cast that ballot and even be able to cast it for the women. I don't know who said it, Professor Jacqueline, that we should refuse to be governed by the male standards. Refusing to be governed by the male standard, it's really good. It sounds really good. Many times we're excited about it, but I think...
That's okay.
If you could just elaborate a little bit, Professor Jacqueline, if you just elaborate a little bit on refusing to be governed by the male standard, I think that will be very nice, so that we know exactly what is it that we need to do when we say we don't want to be governed by the male standard, and we're going to send our own agenda and work within our space that can then be able to guarantee us what we need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Again, Ruth, for that very important comment. I would like to maybe ask George if you can very briefly respond to the question on whether we are making progress, and then we'll come back to Jacqueline, and then we'll be wrapping it all up.
Thank you.
And if you could just also mention the period that the monitoring was done, because just mention so that people have a sense of what period that was.
Yeah, in terms of the monitoring, for the television, we monitored 14 weeks, just immediately after the election, so we went back. For the newspapers, we monitored, I think, 139 editions across the three media houses. I think if I can summarize, do we have progress? We seem to be stuck at the same point that we were. Yes, we see some shift in terms of some variables. For example, when we look at the tone, whether we have more negative story or fewer negative story or more number of stories. But then, as I said, when we see a little bit more stories, as a percentage of all the political stories that were there, there isn't a huge shift. But you can see, say, additional numbers. So when we say 52%, as I explained, is for all the stories that were there. If you look at, for example, today's edition, do we have a story or don't we have a story? You find that 52% of the time there was a story on women political leaders. Ideally, we would expect to have those stories 100% of the time. So we still have a huge gap. I think in terms of tone, yes, we said we see women, for example, being mentioned in terms of their, the possibility of winning, the chances, as opposed to seeing them, as opposed, for example, to seeing stories of the violence that was meted on them that we saw during the baseline. So it's difficult to make one generalizable conclusion. So we have to look at those specific areas that we monitor. And I think it would be more clear if when we shared the report, because it has those specific things.
Okay, I think that's all right. I think let's start with Jacqueline. I mean, you can respond to some of the questions. Maybe start with, what does it mean to have our own standards?
Thank you very much. I think I would like to draw attention to the one person for me who does this very well. And if you know Phoebe Asio, I don't know if there are people who in the room know Phoebe Asio. I think one of the greatest challenges, and one reason why I ran for office in 2007, and why I still believe that my nomination is leading me to election in 2022, is looking at Phoebe. She does not apologize for being a woman. I think anybody who sees Phoebe, you'll see a feminine woman with a brand, but one that does not apologize, because her brand is very powerful, elegant, but she does not apologize for her ambition or for seeking power. She does also not shy away from getting into very difficult context. In the last 5 years, between 2013 and 2017, I think you will notice that because Kenya tends to get very polarized in terms of political parties, which also border on ethnic blockings, you will see that there are contexts in which she would walk in and people would be like, did she go to that meeting? She would be in a place with the President Uhuru and with Waiguru, and then she would be the party leader, Raila Odinga. So when I talk about the balance and not getting the male standards, I'm referring to a journey that I've been to since I went to Beijing, where the general way of dealing with power for men is the winner takes all, and it's adversarial, and you don't yield. I think right now in Kenya, we can see part of that's happening. You take a stand, and you move with it, and you can't go back and apologize, because your identity, usually the male identity, is that you don't yield. And I think I am persuaded, having watched Phoebe Asio, and I'm also persuaded, looking, not that I'm saying we don't have other women political leaders, there are there, but I have found that a number of them still haven't really found out what for me I think is the leadership identity. The sense of wholeness and confidence that combines the traditional, because she knows she's a woman, but does not apologize for her rights, and the modern. So I believe that those of us who would want to, in a way, even reassure men who have begun to feel that when women get into leadership and when women get power, then they become men, or when women get into leadership and they are leading, they don't even think about other women. My idea would be we cultivate a balance, and this balance would truly be what Yvonne had said earlier, that there are fixed gender roles, which would usually put women in child rearing, into being a wife, to being a soft person. But then we make the point and say we now have a duty, and then see how within your own way of engagement, you can become feminine and be comfortable as a woman, but you can cultivate a way by which you become relevant politically, powerful, ambitious, but without really copying men. because I certainly want to see women in the National Assembly speaking as women and very, very strongly articulating issues as leaders, but from the perspective or dimension of women. I then come to the other issue, like quickly, to talk about what do we do. I think that was what do we do when we want to get these women out. And generally, women don't really want to come to the media, and what are the practical ways? I think my response would be that whenever we talk about gender, there are really two key concepts that, in my experience, we sometimes make them look like they mean the same thing, and sometimes we look like we're dealing with them, but we get apologetic. There's one way where we have to just deal with the woman, because the woman is caught up in a box, and the woman seems to be locked and tends to be punished in some ways for things that they cannot even themselves know they are caught up in. Like the women, when you invite them, you know, this lady to come to the media, and then you are saying, but why don't you want to take the opportunity? But we don't realize that from her lens, her perspective, her socialization, that is not an opportunity. That is a risk. So I really want to believe, and I want to thank all my colleagues here who are in the media, but I specifically want to plead with you that I want you to look at this from this perspective. It's the way you have a chicken. I think since most of us are Africans, would know those traditional ways you'd have chicken, and the chicken are covered with something in the traditional way. And then, you know, you lift it, and you expect the chicken to run because they're free, but they don't. Because in their mind, they're still covered. I want to plead with you, and this is why I want to answer this question this way. The gender is real. The way we are saying affirmative action is real, gender is real. And what does gender do? Gender puts you in a box as a woman. And there are messages that will be spelled. And unfortunately, even if you were to be the level of Yvonne, or in the media, or you are in parliament, or you could be Governor Waiguru, there is a way in which that box still somehow hovers around you. So what are the practical things that we need to do? One, I am convinced that we need, when we are dealing with gender, it's a good thing to invite men to the conversation. And I'm happy we invite men to the conversation. But those who've heard me before, including my colleague, Professor Kimani, know that I say, first, you need to get women in their space. You need to get women space. Talk to women in their space. No wonder we merry-go-rounds of women and in the church do so well. Get women in their space. It's not that it's an end, but get them here and then allow a conversation that gets them to generate ways of moving out. Women's empowerment is a sense of dignity, a sense of self-worth, a sense of wholeness in being a woman that makes a woman proud and confident. She doesn't think she's less, or this, regardless of what anybody else says. You are a girl, you'll be married, you know, you don't want. But if a woman has a sense of self-worth, self-dignity, a sense of self-respect, and an ability to determine destiny for themselves. Every little girl, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, 15, needs to have a sense of destiny, a dream. That is women's empowerment. That you have self-worth, that you have self-dignity, that you have an ability to dream, to have a destiny, and then generate options to get there. I would submit that what we would need to do with women to get them to the media is to recognize that a number of them do not have empowerment. And sometimes we bring the gender dimension and we keep saying, all right, let's talk, you know, bring men in the conversation. But honestly, men don't even know what it is the women are experiencing. Some do, but not all of them would know how to move. So my recommendation would be, why don't we, in our programmatic engagements, seek to talk about women's empowerment? And I would submit that we really want to do this from 3 levels. We want them to have leadership training, and this can be done programmatically. One, train the woman at the level of personal leadership. What does it mean for her as a leader? Herself. Because she has to lead herself first. And what does this mean? And help her in this case to get to see herself as a leader. Help her to see she's a woman, that's fine, but help us to see she's a leader. That is personal leadership. Get her to be trained at the private level of leadership. Private level is where a woman would be able to sit with President Uhuru. If she needs to talk to the president, this is where I admire somebody like Phoebe Asio. Many women, they would want to go places, they have an opportunity, they need to talk to people who make decisions, but they're like, now, how can I talk to the president? Who am I to talk to the president? There's a cocktail, people are in the room here, they don't just walk out. Private leadership, that's an area I continue to work on myself. For example, I can tell you, you need to admit that. But if you're not able to move to that level of private, one-on-one. You know, you're dealing with politicians, or you're dealing with the media, editors, or you're dealing with the religious leaders. The woman who's going to make it is the one who is not only whole at the personal level, but the one who has the skills of private leadership. She will move and not deal with people as a whole. She will go and talk to the president or the deputy president or the IG, the people who have power, so they get to know them one-on-one. Because there's a very big difference when, you know, you meet, hello, you're Yvonne Ikwara, what? There's something that happens because they begin to see you as a leader. So I think the programmatic ideas would be, let's not just get leadership where you're just telling women it's your rights, affirmative action. Get these women to feel whole and get them to know you're not going anywhere if you're not networked, or if the people who make decisions don't know you. That's private. And I conclude with the third, which is public. Because I think we are saying that if a woman is really going to be somebody that is going to be in political leadership, is going to have a voice, then she not only needs that wholeness at the personal level, she not only needs to have a clear comfort of talking at the private level, that she doesn't, you know, cow down when somebody is talking to them, but she's got to be able to have an agenda that resonates with the public. It cannot just be about you. You need to be aware. You want to run in 2022, governor, senator, whatever it is. What is the agenda of the particular group of people that you're going to be speaking to? So public leadership really is, and you will know that the kind of people in Kenya, when they talk, everybody wants to hear them, including the media, are people, whether or not they believe it, but they package their message in such a way that it is not their message, it is a message of the public. And I would submit that generally women reduce themselves at that level, because some of them try to be very humble, and some say, oh, you know, it's not honest, that's not really what I'd like to do, and some of them have not really thought it through. So I'd really hope that if we can programmatically work on this way and continue to have conversations, we truly will make a difference.
Thanks, Prof. Thank you, Prof. You know, we have been having lots of discussion with Prof about intergenerational dialogue. And part of the reason why I gave Prof the opportunity to move deeper is for her to share with you, you know, that experience. Because this sharing of knowledge is not just about the research. It's not just about the end line. It's also about what we can do individually and collectively to move this thing forward. Yvonne, quite a number of comments, some including some suggestions of what media can actually do. And let me ask you a very direct one. How difficult it is to have pre-recordings of the women that would like to participate in some of your shows, or links? How difficult is it as a solution?
Yeah, that's a good one. The problem is still finding people at their points of convenience. I think this is something, for example, we do. We're able to take a camera to your house, if you wish, if you give us 10 minutes of your time. It is still invariably easier with men than it is with women. When the interest rate cap, I think when the president had just signed it into law, we sought a number of people, and Joe Donde, who we all know, you know, his work previously, he was the easiest. He said, come to my house. And so we went to his house and set up somewhere, and I did a 10-minute interview with him and left. It's still about finding that space and that time. And yes, there's many, many avenues that we can use to ensure that we get women in. We can get Skype. I don't know if anyone has done Skype in this country. The TV quality is ridiculous. It's horrible. In fact, it's usually easier for me to do a Skype interview with someone in DC than it is here, because, you know, the internet connections are what they are. So there's a number of avenues, and yes. So let me speak to some of those solutions that I see going forward. First of all, I want to state that this is not a Kenyan problem. It's an international problem. CNN, Fox News, think about it everywhere. They have the same problem. The guest booking relations department at CNN has the same problem. Say, do you know any women? You know, we need more women on our panels. So this is a society thing as human beings. Let me also explain that, like I said in the beginning, the same stereotypes you see in society exist in the newsroom. We need to have more women making decisions in the newsroom. I can think of Farida Karone, who's the COO at Citizen. But even, and I did this, you know, last night. So I'm an editor, and in the editors group, we're just 6 women out of 16 editors. So there still is work to be done, even within the media houses, to have more women at the point of where they can make decisions about stories and how they are treated and how they're reported. Women in media face the very same battles, if not worse, than politicians and people out there. We're in the public eye every single day. What you talked about, women being judged by legs, I have been accused of not smiling enough, of not being pretty enough, that when I start a show I should be, nice and bubbly, and that's not who I am, it just isn't. The nature of my show, I discuss serious topics, so I'm serious. And people say, oh, but you're mean. There's other comments that, my husband has been asked whether I ask him the same questions in the house as I do to my panelists. Anakuulizanga maswali kama hizo vile anauliza kwa TV. Unajua anaulizanga maswali, unaishi aje na mwanamke kama huyo? We face the same. And so in trying to make sure that we have women in the limelight, we understand everything. But here's something about women that they understand. The other day I invited Senator Kihika, and very few women do this. She asked me, what's the nature of the set? Will my legs be exposed? And you see, that shows you she's thinking about this show. Like it isn't just, oh, I'm going to come. Okay, fine. And she was very specific. What are we discussing? What are the areas? Of course, as a journalist, I'm not going to give her every exact question, but she was very keen to understand what the topic of discussion is, who the person is, and do your research. When you're going on Cheche, find out about the show, watch a couple of these things, see, and this is the sort of level of preparation I was talking about with women. Know the host, know what their temperament is, know what sort of questions they ask. So you're not just showing up like a deer in headlights and then you get, sort of struck along the way. But solution number one, empower women in media. We work together. We really need to work together on that. Make sure we start to push for those same standards we're asking for in private sector, saying there should be more women in the C-suite, we should have more women making, decisions at that point. I think for me that's solution number one. Solution number two is, the survey that you talked about, George, focused on political stories only. Now, this is my problem. If we want to see women as leaders and we want to push that, then it's not just politics. We need to mainstream this conversation of women. So I want to see women talking about economy, finance, infrastructure, not just the typical education, health, that sort of thing. There's women out there that I really admire and I've had on my show for a number of things. Wanjiru Gikonyo from TISA, Anzetse Were, who's an economist. It's important for society to see women across all spheres. That way they trust the next woman that comes to them and says, I want to give leadership. So we need to start to change the way we do that. And we need to start to change perhaps the surveys and say, not only did we see stories on women in politics, we saw women in various spheres of society. We have to mainstream the issue of women so that if I see a woman who's a builder, an architect, a banker, you name it, a nurse, a doctor, a painter, an artist, an engineer, all of these things. And that is what sometimes I attempt to do, and it can be difficult. Thank you for saying that I should have moderated the bigger one, but I'll tell you what, I'm proud of what I did. I'm very proud that I was, and I think myself and Sophia may have been the youngest moderators. And I always said, because I called them my 6 donkeys. It was, a very colloquial way of talking about them, because I don't think they were empowered in any way. I was the only one who spoke to each of the 6 presidential candidates who are called donkeys, fringe, they're not the horses, and that sort of thing. And George, I thought you should have recognized that instead of asking why. Kai Kai and Joe Ageo were at the top. And then you mentioned that the women were on the sidelines. It was not a sideline. I moderated presidential candidates. And I think it's important to start to recognize these, these little small ones. So in that space, I felt just like the politicians, the women who are there. So I've talked about focusing on a number of other issues. I'd just like to say, Susan was a breakout star. So congratulations. I don't know if you saw all the feedback when she was on that NTV senatorial debate. Everyone thought she made more sense than all the men combined. So that shows you that you don't have to be as forceful, you don't have to be as, and for whatever you want to do going forward, I wish you the best, but you've definitely started that platform. Another thing I want to say, women should, as much as men, step up and start to say, I'm here, this is what I do, this is my recent post on Facebook on this issue, on a number of issues, bombard me. I get all these solicitations from men, and we were saying this a little earlier, from men all the time. Hi, my name is this, I'm a governance and whatnot analyst. From men who qualify, from others who you're just thinking, these views, yeah, you're not all that, but they do it. And that's the thing women need to start doing. Say, this is me, these are my thoughts, this is what I think about. I want to conclude, I hope I can. It's good to tell the gender story, but also realize that women themselves, like I was saying, have the stereotypes. So a lot of the times, women themselves in media want to tell the stories of maternal health and breastfeeding, which is great, but it's not all. So it's the same challenge that is faced there. Allow me to just call out a few that I think really stand out for me. I've had them on my show and others, just as a way of encouraging. Daisy Amdanyi is fantastic. Anzetse Were, Dr. Linda Musumba, who's new. She's from the law school at KU. Dr. Nancy Buka, Joy Brenda Mdivo, Shefa Okore, Dina War, Susan Kariuki of the Youth Agenda, Nerima Wako, everybody loves that woman, Wanjiro Gikonyo, and Jennifer Shamala, who holds her own in a debate. That woman is a tiger. Now I know not everybody has the same sort of disposition, but I admire that about her. Let's start to partner more, and I don't believe in having a woman on every panel, because it becomes tokenism. So you just start to find any woman you can get who might not necessarily be the right woman for the panel, who might not be as knowledgeable on that topic. But so what we need to start to do is to train women and to go beyond the gender and to start thinking of yourself less as a woman. I am a journalist first. All those other things come later. So I understand the looks and whatnot, but I don't focus on it, too much. Is there anything else that I wanted to say? I just want to explain. The reason you saw more women on all those panels during election is because election is the time when things happen on the go. You call people. So we need to start to prepare women to be ready and in a capacity to attend some of these. I'll be honest, there's some people we've called an hour to the show, and then it's long hours. So you're seated for 4 hours doing analysis. So it's just that we need to work together to get women ready and in a space to participate. We can go to their spaces, yes, but there's also sometimes when they are needed, on our platform. And, just finally to say, I finally got a new panelist. She's offered to come on my shows from time to time. So I'm excited about that.
Thanks, Yvonne. Yes, because the show must go on. The newspaper must be printed. The breakfast show must go on tomorrow morning. So you cannot afford to say, I'm not available. Now, what can we do? Because you see, Yvonne has said that let's build capacity of media in the media houses, and we have been pushing the gender policies in the media houses. We need to move it to implementation. But what can we do to support media houses? I know about the list, Julie, that we were compiling online, especially on Twitter, and there was quite a bit of work trying to get women to volunteer, and yet very few turned up. What can we do to ensure that they actually turn up?
Thank you. Just before I respond to that question, I think I'll also touch on the aspect of violence on women. And this is one thing that we've really been grappling with, especially after the just concluded elections. And we've seen a lot of attack on the women. We've seen a lot of attack on Charity Ngilu. We've seen attack on Esther Passaris, of course, previously, and we've seen an attack on the Deputy Chief Justice. We've seen an attack on the Supreme Court Judge, Njoki Ndung'u. What are we doing about it as FIDA? We have been issuing statements, of course, asking the IG, especially when it touches on such attacks, and of course the DPP, just to prosecute these people and bring the perpetrators of this kind of comments, those that are giving this kind of comments, to bring these people to book. And of course we are following up. I'm not sure how many have seen statements, but we've been sending them out. And of course, like the 26th of this week, we had a statement in the dailies, in the national dailies, speaking to the issues on abuse of women, gender-based violence in terms of the statements that are being given. Even when the Deputy Speaker of Embu went ahead and said that it is good to have women in the house because then they make us warm, you know? So how are they viewing the women in that house? They are viewing the women as people who just bring warmth, but otherwise there's nothing else, you know? And this is what also makes us be called flower girls. So then what do we do moving forward for the women also, so that then we kind of find ourselves out of this kind of a cocoon that we have been put in? For us, it's about capacity building for these women. Of course, we continue with the trainings for these women to understand why they need to be profiled, why they need to take up these seats, why it is important that we actually need to bridge that the 2/3 gap. Why is it important that we need to bridge this gap? As FIDA Kenya, as I mentioned earlier, that we shall be moving forward, we shall be doing an induction, not just for all the women MPs, the governors. We have now 9 deputy governors, an induction to speak to them about just the image, even how do you brand yourself, considering that you've probably moved now from an MP to a governor. What is expected of you? How do you carry yourself around? And moving forward also, for those women that tried and did not succeed, then what is it in it for you? So that then you can profile yourself moving forward in preparation for 2022. And our idea is to also collaborate much more with the media. So Yvonne will be calling on you, you know, and all the other media houses will be calling on you more often, so that then we profile these women and prepare them. And even then, we shall also be training them on media engagement. When you're speaking to the media, then what are the do's, what are the don'ts? And of course, we have to engage with the media, because then we also need to have that kind of a liaison to prepare them for what is ahead of them. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A clap to the panelists, guys. You know, I've looked at quite a number of researches related to the election, including what we've just done, the Endline survey. This is research that has been done by Dorothy Otieno and other people. And it's clear to me now that Kenyans are willing to elect more women in leadership positions. If we look at the number of women who ran for gubernatorial positions, there were 6 and 3 were elected. So it's clear to me, really, that Kenyans are not averse to electing women. I think what we need to do, as a matter of urgency, really, is to increase the number of women running for all the positions available. Increase the numbers completely going forward. And that we build the momentum right, like from now. And start, you know, building directories of potential women, you know, for various positions. The other thing that's coming, that's quite clear to me, is that the more you increase the visibility of women, you know, the more they get elected. And therefore, affirmative action works. It does actually work. Nominate them, make them available in the media, they'll get elected. Profile their various activities, you know, whether it's water, whether it's energy, solar energy, and so forth and so on. Profile them. They will get elected. Because Kenyans, I mean, I think we are deconstructing patriarchy. And it's happening in farming communities, it's happening in pastoral communities. Okay. So I think that building partnerships, strategic partnerships with the media, works. It actually works. I recall the last time we worked with Yvonne a number of years ago on a partnership. It was powerful. And this morning we are recalling, you know, all that work. It does actually make a difference. So let's strengthen the partnership with media houses, with friendly journalists, and I think we'll be able to succeed. Now, I want to invite my colleague, Irene. Tuvuke, you want to go? Well, one more thing. Yeah, as you come in. Yeah.
All right, just one thing that you said. We usually think of top-line partnership, Media House and NDI, Media House and NED, but build relationships with individual journalists, reporters, anchors, sometimes, yeah, editors, but you know, the person who really, yes, is doing the story. Build those relationships. That is what will take you further. I mean, the top line ones, don't get me wrong, are great, But sometimes it's just getting your story in there, getting your voice heard. Sorry.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the individuals. It's the individuals and the networks that you build. Tuvuke is about transition, and I want to ask Irene to say something because she's been busting balloons, and I'm wondering why she's busting balloons.
I'm so sorry about the popping of the balloons. Thankfully, we had alerted the hotel that would be doing this. So that they don't send the anti-terrorism or whoever it is. Yes, so Tuvuke is about transition. So one of the things we wanted to emphasize, Twaweza is part of Tuvuke, is to say, let's pop balloons for a peaceful transition. So on the balloons, we want to write what we don't want to see. So if you don't want to see, for instance, violence against women during these coming elections, if we don't want to see online hatred, what they are saying, somebody writes, you post something and then they write something mean back, or Yvonne is on air and then because they are watching it online, they put that, does she ask questions like, why isn't she smiling, So we want to write on the balloons, and we wanted to just identify a few people, but for purposes of demonstration, I'm even scared of writing on these balloons, the way they are popping, without us having done anything. The way to do this balloon challenge is write something mean that somebody has said about you, then pop it, meaning that you're getting rid of that bad thing, and then challenge somebody else to do the balloon challenge. Yeah, we just want to transition in a peaceful way. So my friend Margaret is going to help me. Prof, I don't know whether you
I think you just write what you don't want to see, going forward as we work towards 2022. It will take exactly 2 minutes. And I would like, Yvonne, if you can pop one with your bust. They will face. Yeah.
We're writing violence against women. Yeah, we're using a belt pen. I will give you a marker. Ideally, we should have, but we will do by hand.
Okay, who Yvonne and who?
So Yvonne with who? So Yvonne is writing. You're writing. Did you at least you got the yeah, Prof. We also want Susan to come and do one. She's a young leader. Yeah? Our senatorial. She vied for Senator Nairobi.
Yeah, and I'm so happy to see you.
Yeah. I think just put them here.
Can you do one?
Yeah, Usla can come and do one. Maybe Usla, you'll tell us what you want to write on your balloon.
What is it you don't want to see?
Yeah. We'll just do a few. Just give me the marker there. Oh, Susan was to get one. Let me give you a marker. Here. Oh, this. Is it open? Yeah, okay. Okay. Usla will do. Let me give you a marker. Yeah, so yeah, come over here so that the cameras can also capture. Usla, okay. Oh, okay, there's one more. So women shying. Yeah. Is there a male? We need a male now. George. In fact, you should write manels. We don't want to see manels. Okay. So this one is.
All right. What we don't want to see is women shying away from media, and during the transition, we don't want to see civil strife.
Okay. So with your hands. Yeah, just squeeze the balloon. Okay, so here we have
negative ethnicity. Negative ethnicity.
Negative ethnicity. Harrison. Yeah. So just squeeze the balloon. Susan, are you squeezing? Thank you. Okay. Oh, good. Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, we have put there 2 items, the cyberbullying and then the ongoing prosecutions.
Yeah. Okay, just. Yeah, very good. The last one, media editor. So this one, I think this is our last one. Show us what. Oh, helplessness. Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much. And you can also challenge your colleagues in the media, civil society, anywhere else, even your classmates, if you're in school, just to challenge them to say there are certain things we don't want to see. So let's not participate in those things as we go into the elections and even beyond. So I think Harrison, is it Harrison or Margaret? I think now you can say that your meeting has ended with a bang. So I think I'll hand over so that then they can, Harrison can, and Margaret, I don't know, can do the closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thanks. A clap for Irene again. Yeah, we want to encourage Kenyans to knock off those things that are negative. Harrison.
Very briefly, just to say thank you for making the time and for being here. This is the 4th such event. We started in March. Let me just put this off. We started in March, if you remember. And so this is, for now, this will be the last engagement we have around this whole question of media coverage for women. But as an organization, we are beginning a whole new different conversation in the next couple of months. And, we'll be sending out invites to the discussion that we will be embarking on after the presidential election is done with a finality. So it's just to say thank you for coming and for being with us. A good number of you have been with us since the beginning, and we just want to appreciate that. And even those of you who joined us along the way, including today, I just would like to say thank you and look forward to engaging with you in the days and in the months ahead. So really, for me, it's just to say thank you and to wish you well in everything that you're going to be doing. Thank you so much. Margaret, I think you need to say something.
I'd like just to thank you, this being the 4th roundtable, and Tuvuke has been actively engaged with the media. My pieces for take home in terms of programming would like also to focus on advocacy on gender policies within the newsroom, empower women in the media, that will pick it up in terms of increasing women in the editors' committees. Then we want also to continue and have a sustained support towards women leadership. This being that we are going to set up the trust fund, will continue building the capacity of women so that we have an increased number of women in 2022. So much so far, my gratitude from Kenya Women Holding and Tuvuke in general. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Being a member of the 4th Estate, I have to say I am so proud of my fellow journalists who found time to come here, especially Yvonne. You know, the way she does the night show, she can't start her day way too early. But today she's decided, exactly, to start her day. Exactly. Thank you very much. We really appreciate that, and we appreciate everybody who's found time to join us. Let's take away, the things we've learned and put them into practice. Action, action, action. So as we wind up, We have some feedback forms. Please spare a few minutes to fill them so that we can know how we can improve. There's always room for improvement every time. If you've done the best thing today, tomorrow you need to do better than the best. All right, so apart from that, we'll also be giving some transport allowance. It's not a bribe, it's not a brown envelope. Yes, just to probably, help fuel your car because you drove here, or if you parked on the street, just something. It's really, really minimal. So that's all from me. I'd just like to say thank you so much. And we have so many more of this coming up, and we hope to keep engaging you. And please, if you get an invitation, come with a friend who is in the same line of work as, media and all these things that we are doing. Thank you very, very much. Right.
Hello. Allow me to give directions in terms of how you're going to receive your transport. Hello. Innocent. Hello.